Hello and thank you for joining us. I'm Wilson Stribling. Welcome to another edition of At Issue, where we discuss and debate the issues facing the state of Mississippi and how these issues impact you. We've come to the first major deadline of the 2018 legislative session. Tuesday was the last day for committees to report bills originating in their own chamber. Here's a list of the big items still alive. Several House bills aimed at finding funding solutions to maintain and repair infrastructure passed the full House early in the session and have been sent to the Senate. Rewriting the school funding formula also passed the House. The new plan would increase the amount of state money going to public schools by $107 million over the next 7 years. But it would still be $150 million less than what the current Mississippi Adequate Education Program calls for. Bills are still alive in the House and the Senate that would update parts of the state's Medicaid health insurance program. They're looking at managed care groups controlling spending and possibly reducing payments to health care providers. And there are bills on both sides of the Capitol that call for controlling hundreds of millions of dollars the state is receiving in damages from the BP oil spill settlement. Another bill generating some buzz is Senate Bill 2623. It would give parents the option to spend public money to send a child to a private school. The bill passed out of the Senate Education Committee on Tuesday. The measure gives priority to families with special needs students, but it would allow any public school student from a low or middle income family to attend. We spoke with Committee Chairman Gray Tollison about the bill.
I think there's a demand, there's support for it, and as I've said, it gives parents an option that maybe they're not satisfied with the services they're providing in the public school and they can't afford tuition like wealthy parents in schools where they send their children to private schools. So this gives working parents an ability to have another option if they're not satisfied with the services that child's providing. Because, as I said, one size doesn't fit all, and everybody's different. With technology, the ability to have different modes of learning is available, and as I said, we kind of teach to the middle in a lot of instances, and people at the lower end and the higher end, they don't get that services. And this is really targeted to special needs students and low income and particularly failing schools. And that's what we're trying to do. I mentioned some statistics that are very glaring, and I think if we can utilize the services of private schools across this state, the goal should be to educate students. And if that school wants to accept that student, we should allow that to happen, and that's what this does. And it provides you can use it for tuition, for tutoring, for online learning. There are different services that are available to allow you to spend that money.
It is clearly an attempt to privatize our public schools, and there are so many problems with that, you can't cover them all, but primary among them is the fact that these schools are not obligated to serve our children. We have a public education system because we believe that every child should have a high-quality, free education so that child has an opportunity to succeed. When we start diverting those funds to schools that get to pick and choose which students get to attend school and which ones don't, that have no obligation to report the quality of education they provide or how they spend our tax dollars. In fact, it is written into this bill that they don't want these schools to have to report any data because it would cause them an undue burden to have to provide taxpayers any information at all about how they operate with our tax dollars. Again, that is just an absurd and inappropriate use of taxpayer funds, and overwhelmingly people oppose this.
The Southern Poverty Law Center is opposed to the school choice bill. The SPLC's senior supervising attorney, Christine Bishop, sent us this statement. She says, quote, instead of robbing school children and their taxpayer parents, the legislature should be investing in public schools to support smaller class sizes, better teacher training and recruitment, and new technology. This bill is bad for students, it is bad for teachers, and it is bad for every single community across the state. The concept is simple. Public money should be spent on public schools, end quote. A similar school choice bill on the House side died in committee. Now to the bills that did not make it this year. Here's a list of the ones we've been following. All bills that would have created a state lottery died in committee. This after a special House committee formed by House Speaker Philip Gunn studied the issue last summer. This will not be the year for changing the state flag. All of those bills are dead. The bill that would have given parents an exemption to vaccinate children based on religious beliefs did not pass out of committee. However, there will be a study group formed to further look into that issue. And bills that would have strengthened current federal law to pay women and men equally for equal work also died. There was a last-minute bipartisan push for equal pay for equal work legislation. A group of mostly Democrats and one lone Republican, Representative Tracy Arnold of Prentice, as well as community groups, called for action. Although bills on the topic won't be taken up this year, they want to make it known that women sometimes struggle due to lower wages than their male counterparts when doing the same work.
If we are to truly be serious about the growth and prosperity of our state, we must make the changes that support the economic empowerment of all citizens in this state. The wage gap impacts every Mississippian in some way because either it touches you directly as a woman or it impacts the women you love, including your wives, your daughters, your mothers, sisters, and other loved ones who are being denied equal pay for equal work. This isn't about party affiliation or party politics as usual. This is about simply paying our bills, sending our children to college, putting food on the table, and making ends meet every single day.
Women need to get equal pay. We'll understand where when we go to the store, what we buy costs the same thing as it does for the men. So all I'm asking is that my state not be the very last state to do the right thing. As I understand it now, we are one of 2 states who do not have a law on the book that says what we're supposed to do right.
And I'm here to tell you today that when you look in the eyes of a woman and her eyes are filled with tears and you see her broken heart and her contrite spirit, and they're backed into a corner because of the financial restrictions of this world today. And in that place, in that corner, they often make harsh and hard decisions. And a lot of those decisions they end up regretting. But at that moment in time, it seemed like the only way out. And as a pastor, I know I can't call any names, but I'll say this to you. I've sat in many counseling sessions with ladies, and they're like, Pastor, I don't know what I can do. I can't provide for another child. I don't know what I'm going to do with my child that I'm carrying even now. And the truth of the matter is our church has helped many of them financially, and sometimes we've even connected them to other families that were willing to adopt a child. But ladies and gentlemen, a lot of times it even goes to another extreme. It goes to the place of even abortion. So these financial issues actually impact our society today on social issues, and we need to connect the two and understand that a lot of decisions that we make today are based on our financial status and standing at that time. I've counseled with women and held their hand, and many of them have told me, Pastor, in the midst of the darkest hour of midnight, I can still hear that baby crying. And I'm here to tell you today, as a pastor, when you hold their hand, the only thing you can do at that point in time is say, look, I know that the mercy and the grace and compassion of this God that we serve is extended to you, and that God loves you and God cares for you. But ladies and gentlemen, it's not only time for God to reach out and help our people. It's time for our legislators and our governor and everybody in this great state to reach out and acknowledge that the people of Mississippi are worthy of equal pay for equal work.
There was an attempt by Representative Clark late in the week to tag equal pay onto an unrelated bill. Many Republicans broke ranks and voted with Democrats to amend the bill, but the bill was removed from consideration over a legal question. The next deadline for lawmakers is next Thursday, February 8th. That's when there must be original floor action on bills in their respective chambers. The Democratic leader in the House, Representative David Berria of Bay St. Louis, says the minority party wants to work with Republicans on issues. He spoke at the Stennis Capitol Press Forum in Jackson on Monday. Berria says cooperation and communication with Republicans has improved over recent contentious sessions, but it could be better.
I remain optimistic. I'm a glass half full kind of guy. I think it's always beneficial if you're talking to the other side. it's been unfortunate, I think, that somebody in leadership is telling Republicans, don't talk to Democrats, don't go to dinner with Democrats, don't let me catch you on the floor voting for one of their amendments, no matter how good that amendment might be. It's gotten better over the last few years, but we're not quite there. And I can tell you that my relationship with several of the key Republican committee chairs has gotten much better. And I don't want to call any of them out because I might get them in Dutch with the boss. But I can tell you this, they're calling me on my cell phone, they're catching me in the hallway, pulling me aside saying, look, this is what we're thinking about doing. What do you think your caucus is going to do on this? Can you help us on this? That's the way it ought to work. We need more of that, not less.
The Republicans currently hold a supermajority at the Capitol, controlling both the House and the Senate. Former Governor Bill Elaine is now part of the Hall of Governors. The officially commissioned portrait of Governor Elaine was unveiled on Monday. Several past and present state dignitaries, as well as members of the late former governor's family, attended the ceremony. Governor Phil Bryant says Elaine's dedication to serving the people of Mississippi deserves being remembered by all.
It is important for history, for the memory of Bill Elaine and his service to the state and the nation, that we have this portrait hanging in the halls of governors. That there between William Winter and Ray Mavis will be Bill Elaine.
I think he did a lot for the state of Mississippi, and he was a very smart man. I think he would be proud, and it's a very good picture, and she did a very good job.
Governor Elaine's portrait was painted by artist Robbie Boyd of Pontotoc. Well, country music filled the Capitol Rotunda this week. Mississippi native Marty Stewart announced plans to preserve his collection of musical history in Neshoba County. Marty Stewart's Congress of Country Music will incorporate the historic Ellis Theater in Philadelphia. He says it will be a world-class destination for people to enjoy and learn from country music.
This is going to be a global destination, no doubt in my mind, and to join the country music trail and the blues trail and all the musical museums to come to Philadelphia, Mississippi, and around Choctaw as a destination, and to come from all over the world to enjoy the culture of country music and to study country music and to be entertained by it and educated by it. And so it could have gone anywhere in the world, but it just seemed like taking it back to the homeland 35 miles away from the father of country music's birth of it, Jimmy Rogers, and to put it in the ground and let it live forever and shine and shine and shine for the world.
$2 million of state money is in the project. More than 20,000 pieces of country music history in Stewart's personal collection are planned to be on display from artists like Johnny Cash and Patsy Cline. Well, let's get straight to the point now with views from both sides of the aisle. Austin Barber is a Republican national strategist. He's the founding partner of the Clearwater Group. Brandon Jones is a Democrat. He's an attorney with the Beria Jones law firm and is a former member of the House. Gentlemen, thank you for being here on At Issue.
Thanks.
Let's talk first about this idea of vouchers. It's being called a lot of different things. Public school education, being able to use some of the money that would be spent on your child's education to take it elsewhere, perhaps to a private school. Brandon, a lot of Democrats are very upset about this.
Yeah, I hope everybody who cares about public education in Mississippi is paying careful attention to this debate. What we're talking about is subverting funds that are public funds to help pay for private schools, and it has some pretty interesting consequences. For example, you could take a person in North Mississippi and help subsidize their tuition payments for a Tennessee private school. When you look at the price tag, it's pretty shocking as well. About $15 million would be committed to this in the first year in 2019, and then when we get to 2027, over $260 million. Now, it's not simply a philosophy problem, it also creates a serious math problem for the state of Mississippi. If we cannot fund our public school system, which we have admitted by our own funding over the course of the last 8 years, then shifting $260 million out of that program into private schools that are unregulated, not reporting to the state, not in dialogue with any entity at the state, should trouble folks who are supporters of public schools. And so I hope that this bill gets diverted. I hope it doesn't survive. And I think it should be troubling to all of us.
You know, Brandon's really good at what he does. That's why he's sitting across the table. and having this conversation with us, he goes straight for the worst case scenario if you're trying to argue that side. I'm going to look at my notes here for just 1 second, because I think one of the most important things that I read on this issue was from the Lieutenant Governor, Tate Reeves, who said, quote, Senate Bill 2623 could have more impact on long-term economic progress than any other bill debated in the legislature this year. And I think what Tate Reeves is saying is what a lot of Republicans feel like is, listen, when you go talk to anybody in the state, your neighbors, your friends, the people you work with, what do they say? We want the economy to get better. I want a better job. I want to make more money. I want to have more things that I can do. That's what's most important. Well, how do we do that? This is a little bit of the chicken and the egg. Big time employers are looking for an educated workforce. They're looking to have people that they can go hire that are well trained or can be easily trained because they're smart and educated. And that's the kind of system that we've got to build. We've got to improve. We've got to make sure that we have that, particularly at the K through 12 level. And I think that is what Republicans are trying to focus on and have tried to focus on for a number of years. And this is just one step of that process, Brandon.
I do think that Lieutenant Governor Reeves had it right with respect to it helping grow part of the economy. I think the folks who run for-profit charter schools and private schools ought to be licking their chops as they see this thing come down the pipeline, because they know they're going to make some money off of it. But when it comes to the net effect and what impact it's going to have on making our student population smarter or better equipped for competition in the global marketplace, there's nothing that you can point to that would give you any comfort in that. They have, as Ms. Loom said, completely written out any type of oversight. They've written out any type of accountability. They're not going to be showing what their curriculum is. This could go to a fly-by-night school that has no hope of even surviving the school year for which money is dedicated to it. There's a lot of risk here. And really, I think it's important to say Democrats are not anti-choice when it comes to school. People should have choices, and they should have some decisions that are good decisions. But I think that when you're talking about a state that cannot adequately fund its existing education program, this is the type of extraneous argument that we simply cannot afford. If you cannot do basic things, the idea of doing some complex kind of secondary thing that diverts public funds, I think really we haven't earned the right to have this debate and to divert these kind of funds.
I want to sort of kind of deconstruct this for just a little bit, because this is a hugely important issue that we're talking about. And first, Grant Callen and the guys in Empower Mississippi, they're the ones who've driven a lot of this debate, and they deserve credit for bringing this up. Now, whether this passes, and they've worked on charter schools in the past, whether this passes or not, I think we're a long way from there. I think they would probably tell you the same thing. But listen, we have to go back a couple of years, and we look at the special needs grant program, lottery program that was set up. That's the genesis of all this. There are 500 children in the state of Mississippi, 500 only, children who have special needs, whose parents were able to apply for the lottery, for the special needs lottery, and say, my school system, my kid's school, wherever it is in the state, can't take care of my kids, cannot help my kids. Please let me apply, win this lottery, get a $6,500 voucher, okay, and use that to go to an independent school. That's the genesis of this. So what the legislature is saying, and what Chairman Tollison was saying, is we're going to expand that. We're essentially going to take it up to 2,500 kids, all right? And then if that's good, we'll take it up, and 2,500 kids is 1/2 of 1%. And then we move it up 1%, and then 1%. I like their approach. Let's go slow. Let's test this. These are for kids who are, one, either special needs, or two, who are in severe poverty issues. Our kids would not be able to go and apply for this, okay? So these kids that are locked into situations that are not good for them because they're special needs, or they're locked into them because they're in failing school districts, and I think that's where this will likely end up, because I don't believe that this needs to be for kids who are in, really good school districts. This is my opinion. This needs to be where kids are stuck in failing school districts.
Well, I think you're clearly sincere about this. I mean, I think you've thought it through, and I respect your position on this. I sometimes fear that the special needs children get used as a bit of a political hot potato in these things. We throw them in to kind of make another proposal look nicer.
Sure.
The idea, this zero-sum argument, that somehow without this, special needs children cannot get the education they deserve is a little bit disingenuous as it comes from Senator Tollison and others who have kind of backed this bill, for the simple fact that we should all be working to make sure that at the local level we have options and support for special needs kids. And I thought, Austin, we had done some of that with our public school bills that we just passed that is supposed to bolster special needs education.
That's right. And the school funding, the new school funding formula, there's no question what you're saying is right. These are parallel tracks. I mean, the legislature is going to have a conversation about that. You make a really good point. And yes, we should all try to make these public schools better. But in some of these districts, the leadership doesn't exist in some of these places to do that. And they failed for decades. And I think this is the legislature saying, hey, we want to try to help these kids that are stuck there.
Let's talk about equal pay for equal work legislation. Someone would argue that in this day and time, it seems odd that legislation would be needed for something like this. Why do you think, Austin, that this legislation has had trouble gaining traction at the Capitol?
I must be candid. I do not know the details of the legislation. I'd hate to try to get into a deep discussion about it. But look, as a husband, as a father of a 10-year-old daughter, I want my daughter and my wife, if they want to enter the workforce, or when they enter the workforce, to say, look, to have the ability to make the same amount of money as any of us sitting across this table. That's a fundamental belief. But I just don't know the details of this legislation to understand the nuances of it at this point in time.
I hate to talk ancient history with you guys, but there was a version of this bill that was around even back when I was in the House of Representatives, so it's been kicked around for a long time. The genesis of this bill is the Lilly Ledbetter Fair Pay Act, which is a piece of federal legislation that was passed. And what has happened is states across America have adopted their own version of it to ensure that, so far as the state can control it, that there is equal pay for women when they do a similar job to men. Now, I'm not telling you guys anything you don't already know when I say Mississippi has a bit of a perception problem, and we are sometimes looked at as a little bit backwards. I thought Representative Arnold did a fine job of hitting the nail on the head in terms of saying what he has dealt with in his own congregation. I think that the story he tells there, some of those stories are true. I think some of people's experience. Part of the thinking that goes on in young women's heads when they're graduating college and trying to figure out where to go to next, I think something like this is a strong consideration. And if the front page of your paper tells you that your legislature won't pass a bill that has been passed by 45 plus state legislatures, you start to say, well, what makes us unique and different? Are Mississippi guys just smarter, and have they figured out that we don't need this? Or is perhaps the federal government and these other 45 states correct?
I will say, as a small business owner, the men and women who work for us, I mean, we're paying them based upon their ability, not their sex. I think that's very important personally to me. And I don't like when the government tries to come in and mandate specific things. But again, I just don't know the details.
It's a good point. And just to address that quickly, the implementation of this bill and the amendment that passed in the House this morning would not affect the scenario you just described.
Okay.
Let's talk about the lottery, another issue that's been brought up many times over the years. It seemed to be gaining a good bit of steam this year, and then it didn't. What happened, Brady?
You know, for a guy who's never purchased a lottery ticket, I thought I've done a pretty good job of carrying this thing along for it to only die. And I think that of all the kind of strange things that we look at each year, the lottery continues to deserve our attention. And, you and I just had a long debate about a voucher program. Well, see, the lottery comes at almost zero cost to the state and has a potential to create some pretty solid revenue. I don't know what it is with you guys, Austin. I don't know why Republicans don't like to create revenue, but this could be a good opportunity. It could be used for some of these programs that you and I have talked about that just aren't getting the attention they deserve out of our budget. And again, here we are, it's dead.
Yeah, I don't know the details of what's going on with the lottery. That was very quiet. It was very interesting.
Yeah.
But it's a long session. This thing could come back at any minute, as we both know. And I've always said, listen, I think that the gaming industry has invested they have invested billions of dollars, have tens of thousands of employees in this state, and I don't think it would be a fair system to go and bring forth the lottery to compete with them. That would hire nobody, have no brick and mortar existence here. I know it's a very popular opinion for people in the state, and we'll see what ultimately ends up happening with this. But I don't think it's dead.
In our remaining minute, there was passionate calls for medical exemptions to vaccination requirements in Mississippi before kids can enroll in school. Did it surprise you, Austin, that didn't get anywhere?
I think Andy Gibson deserves a lot of credit for this. I sort of fall on both sides of this. One, I like that we are first in the nation on vaccinations. On the other side, my libertarian comes out of me and goes, I don't want the government really mandating anything on what parents should do with their kids. But I think Andy Gibson said, let me have a cool head about this, step back, let's really study this the next year and make a decision next session, Brandon.
I'm a little concerned about what happens to me if I compliment Representative Arnold and Representative Gibson in the same show, but I'm about to do it. I'm glad that it didn't pass, and I do think it's a public health concern, and I think that we should be proud of the position that we hold in the country, that we do require this as a matter of public safety.
Much more of the session to go, and we will cover it all on At Issue with the two of you's perspective. Thank you very much, as always. And we thank you for joining us. We're out of time. Don't forget, you can watch the program on our website, mpbonline.org/issue. And we invite you to join us again next Friday night here on MPB for another edition of At Issue. Good night.